Well, just when you thought the whole unholy saga of the sexual assault accusations against Bill Cosby couldn't get any worse, it goes and gets worse. Now, it seems that a judge has unsealed some documents from a legal case, a lawsuit in which Cosby was involved 10 years ago, in which he ultimately settled out of court. And a deposition from those proceedings has been made public, in which Bill Cosby actually admitted that he gave quaaludes to young women with whom he planned to have sex. Well, obviously, this only strengthens the already widespread suspicions that Bill Cosby may very well have done what more than 24 women have accused him of doing, namely drugging and raping or otherwise sexually assaulting them. However, while I think the suspicions are totally legitimate, and frankly I share them, by the same token, I think it's still important for us to reserve judgment and not rush to judgment and not jump to conclusions here, not even based on this latest revelation. Now, some observers and commentators have said that, the media needs to be taken to task for not simply coming out and saying Bill Cosby raped these women based on this latest revelation. But guess what? Even this latest revelation does not make crystal clear that he is in fact guilty. I read an article on Mike.com yesterday or today in which the author wrote that you can't give a woman quaaludes, a strong sedative, and then have sex. That is rape. But here's the thing, and this is a definition to which that same author alluded in that article. The FBI defines rape as the carnal knowledge of a person without the consent of the victim, including instances where the victim is incapable of giving consent because of his or her age or because of his or her temporary or permanent mental or physical incapacity. Now, that issue of incapacity is very important. What that means in the context of a person who's been given drugs or some other mind-altering substance like alcohol, here's the thing to remember. You have to show that the victim was actually incapacitated by that substance. It's not enough just to show that the person was on drugs at the time, nor even merely to show that the person had been given drugs like quaaludes by the person who stands accused of sexually assaulting her. You have to show that the substance actually had an impact on her body chemistry that made her incapable of understanding what was going on and therefore incapable of giving consent to sexual activity. You have to show that she was actually incapacitated. In order to show that, it's not enough simply to show that she had drugs in her system, not even if the person accused of sexually assaulting her was the one who gave her the drugs. It is possible to take drugs without necessarily being completely incapacitated by them. You can get a slight buzz or what have you. I'm not familiar with quaaludes in particular. I understand it is a strong sedative, but even so, I'm pretty sure that as a legal matter, I'm not giving this as official legal advice, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure that as a legal matter, it's not enough just to show this person had a mind-altering substance in his or her system. You have to show that he or she was actually incapacitated by the drug at the time, and therefore she was incapable of giving consent. And Bill Cosby's admission in the deposition didn't go quite that far. His lawyer intervened to instruct him not to answer any more questions, right? At least on that line of questioning. And so he didn't actually go so far as to admit that, the women, or in that case the woman with whom he had had sex, was actually incapacitated at the time. Now, from the text of the deposition, Cosby was asked, when you got the quaaludes, was it in your mind that you were going to use these quaaludes for young women that you wanted to have sex with? He answered yes. When later on in the conversation, in the deposition, he says, I met Miss, name redacted, in Las Vegas. She meets me backstage. I give her quaaludes. We then have sex. But he doesn't actually say that. For one thing, he doesn't even say whether or not she wanted to take the quaaludes. He doesn't state that he gave them to her against her will, that he force-fed her the quaaludes, or that he snuck them into her drink or whatever. And in any case, the bottom line is he doesn't say she was passed out and then we had sex. He doesn't say she was unresponsive and then we had sex. If he had said something to that effect, then it would have been clearer that she was incapacitated when he had sex with her, and therefore that sexual activity constituted rape. But he didn't go so far as to admit that, and his lawyer stopped him before he could admit that. So under the circumstances, it still makes sense for us to reserve judgment. Certainly it makes sense for media outlets reporting on this story to continue to use the word alleged to describe what he's accused of having done. And it still makes sense for those of us in the general public and the court of public opinion to recognize that we are engaging in speculation. We're making educated guesses about what did or did not happen. And, you know, with this latest revelation, our guesses are a bit more educated than they were previously. I have my own suspicions about what happened, but even I can't say, not even based on this deposition testimony, that he definitely did what his accusers say he did. You know, so even under the circumstances, we shouldn't read more into this deposition testimony than is actually there. It's still important to avoid rushing to judgment. There's nothing wrong legally or morally with saying, I suspect that Cosby probably did what these women say he did. To at least some of them, or maybe even to all of them. But to say definitively as a fact that he raped these women is not quite justified, certainly in a legal sense, not even based on what we now know from this, that he admitted in this deposition. So that's just a little clarification I wanted to share with you all to make sure that the conversation surrounding this issue is as well informed as possible. It's not enough to say, to show that a woman or any other person was drugged at the time that sexual activity occurred in order to prove that rape occurred or any form of sexual assault. You have to show that he or she was actually incapacitated at the time, and that is still not firmly proven in the Cosby accusations. Keep that in mind, folks. Can't wait to hear your feedback.